You ever have one of those weeks where everything just goes wrong? That was me last month. Work was a nightmare, my car broke down, and my landlord decided to raise the rent. So, when my best friend Jess suggested a weekend camping trip to clear away the gunk from a very bad week and recharge our batteries, I was all in. We picked this spot deep in the woods, no cell service, no people, just nature. It sounded perfect. Jess brought her dog, Max, a big, goofy golden retriever who loves the outdoors as much as she does. We packed up the car with tents, food, and way too many snacks, and off we went. The first day was amazing. We hiked, set up camp, and spent the evening by the fire roasting marshmallows and telling stupid ghost stories. You know, the kind where you laugh more than you scream. But as the sun went down, something felt off. Like the woods were too quiet. No birds, no crickets, just this heavy silence. Jess noticed it too. "Weird, right?" she said, glancing around. "It's like the forest is holding its breath." I laughed it off, but deep down I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. That night I woke up to the sound of Max growling. At first I thought it was just a squirrel or something, but then I heard it. A low, guttural sound, like nothing I'd ever heard before. It wasn't an animal. It was wrong. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the tent. "Jess, you hear that?" I whispered. She was already awake, sitting up with her own flashlight in hand. "Yeah," she said, her voice shaky. "What the hell is that?" We stepped outside, Max close behind us. The sound was coming from the trees, just beyond the edge of the campsite. It was closer now, louder. My heart was pounding as I swung the flashlight toward the noise. That's when I saw it. Just for a second, in the beam of the light, there was something. A figure, tall and thin, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. It was standing perfectly still, watching us. In that moment, it seemed as if time stood still. It seemed as if every hair on my body stood on end. The terror was so real I could almost touch it. And then in the blink of an eye, that thing, that creature, whatever it was gone. Jess and I didn't sleep the rest of the night. We stayed by the fire, Max curled up between us, his ears twitching at every sound. By morning we were exhausted, but the sunlight made everything feel less terrifying. "Maybe it was just a deer," Jess said, trying to convince herself as much as me. "Or a weird tree." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the image of that thing in the woods. The next day, we decided to stick close to camp. Jess wanted to explore a nearby creek, so we packed a lunch and headed out, Max leading the way. The woods were beautiful in the daylight, but I couldn't relax. Every rustle of leaves made me jump. Every sound made me twitch with fear. We found the creek and spent a couple hours there, skipping rocks and soaking our feet in the cold water. It was peaceful, almost enough to make me forget about the night before. Almost. The day passed quickly, and the sun dipped below the horizon. On the way back to camp, Max started acting strange. He stopped walking, his ears perked up, and he let out this low, warning growl. "What is it, boy?" Jess asked, kneeling beside him. That's when we heard it again, the same guttural sound from the night before. It was closer this time, and it was coming from all around us. "We need to go," I said, my voice trembling. Jess didn't argue. We started walking faster, then running, Max barking like crazy behind us, but the sound kept following us, getting louder and closer with every step. When we finally made it back to camp, we were out of breath and terrified. "We're leaving," Jess said, already packing up the tent. "We're not staying another night." But as we were loading the car, Max started barking again. I turned to see him running toward the trees, chasing something. "Max, no!" Jess shouted, running after him. I followed. I caught up with them. Jess made a desperate lunge, grabbed Max by the collar. "Come on," I said. We hurried back. As we headed back, that sound, weird and unearthly, grew closer.
"Keep quiet, please. Quiet. Quiet, please."
We hadn't ventured that far from our camp, yet it felt like we were hopelessly lost, going in circles. Jess looked terrified, holding onto Max's collar like her life depended on it. It felt like we were going deeper and deeper into the woods. The trees seemed to close in around us, their branches twisting into strange shapes. Then Max began barking like crazy. Jess tried to calm Max down and was finally able to get him to stop barking. We stumbled into a clearing. It felt peaceful, bathed in the soft moonlight. We stopped for a minute to gather our bearings and catch our breath. Jess was fearful, breathing hard. "This doesn't make any sense," she said. "We weren't that far from camp." Her eyes were wild with panic. Then I saw it. Behind her, standing in the shadows, was the thing from the woods. It was taller than I remembered, its limbs twisted and unnatural. Jess turned around and saw it too. Her eyes widened with fear. We didn't think. We just ran, Jess clutching Max. We ran until my legs felt ready to give out, until I couldn't breathe, until we finally stumbled out of the woods and into the parking lot. We didn't stop until we were in the car, driving as fast as we could away from that place. Jess and I never talked about that trip again. To tell you the truth, that trip marked pretty much the end of our friendship. I don't think either of us blamed the other for what happened. It's just that every time I saw her, it reminded me of the horror we'd witnessed, and I guess she felt the same way. It was easier to just avoid her than to have to think about that nightmare every time I saw her face. I tried to tell a couple of my friends about the thing in the woods, but they didn't believe me. They said it was probably a bear or a mountain lion, something that spooked us and made us imagine the rest. But I know what I saw. I still have nightmares about that trip, about the cold fear I felt in my stomach, about the thing standing in the shadows. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear that sound. The low, guttural growl that doesn't belong to any animal. I don't go camping anymore. I don't even like being outside after dark because I know what's out there. Oh yeah, it's out there. Waiting in the woods.